I think it also hinders the quality of relationships because you can have a friend who lives in the same state as you, driving distance, and your relationship exists entirely virtually.
That's crazy, bro. That's a great point.
I was talking about movies earlier, and I love watching older movies because there's no cell phones. When you think about the stories your parents tell about growing up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, their stories seem so deep and layered, and their relationships so complex. And I think it's because those relationships existed entirely in person and not virtually. When you're sitting with someone just having a conversation face to face, it's so much more real and effective than on a phone screen.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the You Are Story podcast. I'm your host, Gabriel Hoff Jr. And like I've been saying, I appreciate all the support that I've been getting from friends, from family, from even people that I don't know. Y'all have been a couple of y'all have put some comments on the Instagram and, things like that, and been liking and stuff like that. So that's just been so encouraging to see. And it makes me feel like, I'm doing something right here. It makes me feel that, I'm fulfilling the purpose that God has set for me in my life. And this is something I'm really passionate about. And, just seeing the fruits come out of that's such a blessing. So I appreciate that. But there have been some of y'all that have been listening, whether on the streaming platforms or on the YouTube, and I don't see too many likes. I don't see too many subscriptions. I don't see too many, ratings. So what are y'all doing, right? If you are listening, please leave a rating. Please leave a review. If you're on the streaming platforms, please leave a rating and a review. That'll help. That'll be greatly appreciated. And, I'm just curious to hear what y'all think about each episode and what y'all think about the podcast as a whole. And so if you do that, that'll be greatly appreciated. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment, just say what you think about the podcast, what you think about everything as a whole, some different ideas, anything. That'd be greatly appreciated. Please subscribe, turn that post notification bell on so you can be notified when new episodes come out. That'll just be a great help. That'll help put this in more hands and more ears of people. So, that'll be greatly appreciated. And, I would just, that just encourages me just to see, people just interacting. And that's what this is all about. This podcast truly is for us. So, I appreciate y'all for that. But I have a special guest here for y'all today. This is a guy who I've known for almost 10 years now. Somebody who I've had the pleasure of being acquaintances with at one time. Then we grew into friends, and then we were roommates in college for a while. And, now I'm proud to call him, my brother, brother from another mother. So I have my man Dalton here. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know you're a busy man, and you got a lot of responsibility. You got a lot on your plate and everything. So I just appreciate you for being here on this, for supporting me and, just having some kind words to say about it, man. But when I first brought this idea to you, when I first sent you the trailer for this podcast and you listened to it for the first time, I'm curious to know what was your initial reaction upon hearing it.
I thought it was really awesome that you're putting something together like this. I think it's really tough to put yourself out there like that, speak to a group of people, put in a lot of work that sometimes goes unrecognized. So when you asked me to be a part of it, I thought, yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, man, because for me, I've always wanted to be somebody who works behind the scenes. I never if I had a chance to be the movie star or be one of the people working behind the scenes, like the producer or the director, I would choose the person behind the scenes because I really don't care for the credit. It's nice and there is a place for that, but I'm not somebody who is gonna struggle mentally if I'm not getting credit for something that I'm clearly working on. It's kind of why I like engineering because you look around, like in this church right now, we don't know who built it. We don't know who designed it, but we're benefiting from the work that they did, and they're not necessarily going to get credit for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I like engineering, and that's kind of how I like approach life, you know. But it came to a point where I just felt God tugging on me, and he was like, you know, you got to do this, son. You got to do this. So yeah, this was put in my heart, bro, to start this podcast. I also have a blog that I do called thereclassified.com. Make sure you go check it out. I post other blogs on there, post other encouraging content on there. Make sure you go read it. It'll be a great help. It'll be greatly appreciated. Shameless plug. But yeah, I just like working behind the scenes, man, you know, but I just felt God was telling me to do a little bit more. So that's why I brought this thing up, man, and, you know, brought it to you. But, you know, enough about me, bro. This is about you. We're in the business of telling your stories, right? This is called You Are Story. And Dalton, Bain, you are the story. So I met you. Something I like to do in every episode. I like to remember when and how I met people. And, you know, when we first met, it was at the freshman orientation for our high school. We went to CAD, Central Academy of Technology and Arts. It was like a magnet school, so it pulled in a bunch of different kids from different schools in the county. And it was kind of cool because you could kind of see the diversity, the different characteristics of different kids, you know, and from all different types of walks of life. So, you know, it was pretty cool. And it also presents an opportunity to meet new people. And you were the main person I met. You were the first person I met. And we were put in the same group. And, you know, it was a great time. But I think being the first person that I met at orientation kind of set the trajectory for where our friendship was going to go, because that foundation was already there. And so it's like, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. When you meet somebody at the orientation, once the school year starts, it's kind of in your mind, like, where is this person? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so I was searching. I didn't really know too many people in my classes. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping you would be in some of my classes. Did we have any classes freshman year?
World history.
With Zunic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Zunic, RP. I miss that, man. But yeah. So you want to kind of like dive into that whole, what your experience was like at orientation?
Yeah. So we were placed in the same group, and if I remember correctly, you kind of rotate around the school. They walk you through the school. They show you where classrooms are, where the cafeteria is. You do different games and activities.
Yeah.
And you were the first person I met, and kind of what you were speaking to is when you come back to school, you kind of associate the school with that person, you know, like they kind of seem like a support person. So I was very fortunate to have you in my group. A lot of times your early friends in middle school or high school are just based on proximity. And sometimes you can grow apart from those people because you don't necessarily share things in common.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you and I did, and we built a pretty strong bond from the beginning. So I think we got really lucky with that.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting that you say that we shared some similarities, because I think out of all of my friends, and I have a ton of different friends of a ton of different type of characteristics. I think that's healthy for anybody to have friends of all different types of walks of life, because you can learn so much from people. But I think out of all my friends, you're one of the few that I guess I can see myself in, if that makes sense. Well, I can see myself in all my friends, but with you, it's like a ton of things.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I don't mean to get ahead. I was going to bring this up later, but when I found that out once we got into college, and we were roommates in college, because there was one time, and I'm sure you remember this, it was your birthday, and I slid like $20 under your door. And then when I got back, the $20 was on my pillow. And I was like, what? And so I went up to you. I was like, bro, take the money. And you were like, nah, it's all good. You don't have to give me money. And bro, that is so much like me, bro, because it's just that humility. Like, it's like the gift is that we're friends. You know what I mean?
That's a great way of putting it.
You don't have to pay. You don't have to give me. And gifts are nice. There's a place for gifts, but the gift for me is that I know you. You know what I mean? That's a gift in and of itself. And bro, that from that moment, I was like, dang, like this dude, he's really about it. Like he's really like like that. And so that humility, and that was even something I saw in you in high school as well. I guess that humility, does that come from somewhere, or is it something you kind of learned as you went throughout life?
I don't think there's a humble way to answer this, but I think that's a very nice thing to say. Something you mentioned that stood out to me was when we got to college, it wasn't based on what I was saying earlier, like a proximity friendship.
Yeah.
You have friends that you can hang out with in niche environments. For example, maybe you have a friend you play basketball with. When you try to do something outside of basketball, you realize, oh, maybe I'm not the greatest of friends with this person. Maybe it's just the environment that works.
Yeah.
So when we got to college, we kind of realized that we have more in common than just the proximity thing.
Yeah.
So as far as humility goes, I don't know. I don't think it's something you pick up at a certain place or time in life.
It's just
more of an evolution thing,
I feel
based
that.
on the people you're around.
I feel that.
So I think it's very fortunate I was friends with you and many other people in high school, because you learn that based on the people you're around.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that, because for me, I get it from just my experience. Something I've learned, right, is that as you get older, you're presented with a choice, right? Because you have your environment, and your environment includes people you're around.
Yeah.
It involves where you grow up. It involves some of the things that you do. Your environment is like everything around you. And so I grew up in a very like small environment. Indian Trail is, a small town. My family was pretty small at the time. It was just for a while, it was just my parents and me and my sister. That's before my brothers were born. And, there wasn't really too much to do in the city. So we had to be creative. And, the reason I say your environment kind of gives you a choice is because let's say that someone has grown up in a bad environment.
Yeah.
They could either choose to be a product of that, or they can choose to not be a product of that. And it reminds me of this story I heard from somebody on, I forget where, but there were these two brothers, and their father was a very bad dude. He, did bad things and stuff like that. And when the brothers grew up, one of them became like their dad. One of them became completely different from their dad and was making an impact in this world. Mm-hmm. And they asked the brothers, this is not a true story. This is just like a parable or whatever. But not a parable in the Bible, but just kind of like a story to give you perspective. But they asked both the brothers, why are you the way you are? And they both said, because how could I not be? Because this is who my father was, right? So that's why I say your environment gives you a choice, because you could either choose to be a product of that, or you can choose to go in the other direction. And so for me, coming from a small town, being surrounded by my whole family, and my family, we weren't necessarily like poor, but the way I describe it is we couldn't, it's not that we couldn't afford things. We just couldn't afford the sacrifice. What I mean by that is we couldn't afford to get like toys because we had to pay for the food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like we couldn't afford the food, but we can't afford not to pay for the food, because then we won't get food because we paid for all these other materialistic things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just coming from that's contributed to my humility, I feel, because it just showed me that, I don't need all this stuff. I don't need to show off. All I need is just to be who I am, who, God made me. And so for you, I guess sort of describe the environment that you grew up in. Is that a loaded question?
No, I don't think so. I was born in upstate New York.
That's right. Yeah.
Moved down here. I have two great parents. So I think speaking to what you said about having the choice to either replicate or go in the opposite direction of what you're taught.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know if that happens in a given point in time.
Yeah, definitely.
I think over the course of your lifetime, you really begin to learn how that works. So
yeah.
My parents would set aside time and resources to make sure I was doing things I cared about. When I was very young, I was in Boy Scouts. When I got older, I began to play sports, baseball and basketball. And they would always dedicate their time and money to showing up to my events, taking me to tournaments, making sure I had equipment. And you learn to appreciate those things. And when you get older, you look back and realize that they didn't have to do that. I really like the parable you gave, because going forward, you have the choice to either align with your past or correct it. You know?
Yeah.
So the environment I grew up in was a really positive one, and one that I'm pretty appreciative of.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that is something that you grow into. You know, I didn't really think too much about how much my parents did for me until I got older. It's something I don't even think I necessarily realized until college, because you know that I graduated early. And when that happened, it's a crazy story, because I was in class and then they call me to the counselor's office, and I go in there and I see both of my parents in their meeting with Miss Cole and Miss Lawson. And those are the counselors at the time. And, you know, I didn't know what was going on. I knew I wasn't in trouble because I don't do anything. You know, I was a good student. But you know, I went in there, and the first thing they say is like, "So I heard you want to graduate early." I was like, "What? I want to what? Like, you want to graduate early?" And like, I already knew that my parents had, you know, brought this up. And, you know, I wouldn't say I never hated my parents, but it was a point where it was like, dang, like, y'all couldn't just let me rock this out. Like, y'all couldn't let me, because I'm missing out on a whole senior year where I could graduate with my friends. Yeah. I could do the senior events, do the pep rally, win a pep rally. I never got to win a pep rally. What else? But yeah, just all the senior stuff, man. And
I think it's hard to understand that your parents have an entire context of living an entire life that you don't have. They have examples and situations they've gone through where they're able to share advice with you, but your perspective is what you're living. So a lot of times it feels like not the right decision, or you feel like you know the direction you head in, and it's hard to really understand that they're just looking out for your best interests the entire time.
Yeah. And looking back, you know, I definitely saw the benefit it had in my life, but that's not something I realized till I lived it out. And I can honestly say, you know, I don't know, without that decision, I don't know where I would be, because we had this conversation back at college once. This was after we were roommates, and I think this may have been while we were roommates or afterwards, like after we could go back to school from COVID and everything. But we were eating one time, and I was telling you, like, you know, that was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because it allowed me to find myself. It allowed me to find my identity, because back in high school, I think I based a lot of who I was on my surroundings. Yeah. Like, you know, I based it on who people said I was. You know, all Gabe, you're this, all Gabe, you're that, all Gabe, you're this, all Gabe, you're that. Some people would tell me, all Gabe, you could get any girl you want to. I'm like, I just rode along with it. I just rock with it. That's not even how I was, but I would just like agree with them just because like it sounded good.
Yeah.
But that's not who I was though. And deep down I knew that. And so when I went to college and I wasn't around any of my friends, I was around people who didn't know who I was. Nobody cared to know who I was. And it was just about that. Like nobody knew who I was. It was like, okay, nobody is here telling me what to do, who to be, how to act. I got to figure out what I like to do.
Yeah.
I got to figure out who I am. And so that throughout college, like that whole freshman year, like I struggled, bro. Like I was just in an identity crisis. Like I didn't know who I was and I didn't know who I should talk to and, you know, even like who to really even trust.
Yeah.
And so going through all of that, and then by the time, you know, all of y'all graduated, like the class of all my friends graduated high school and y'all came to college and stuff. By the time you came and we roomed together, by that time, I knew who I was by that time, you know? So looking back, like that was one of the best decisions that was made for me. And, you know, I appreciate my parents to the fullest because at the end of the day, that made me realize that they just are looking out for my best interests, you know? Yeah. But,
yeah, the freshman year of college is a very formative year.
It is, bro. It is.
You know, you're living on your own. You have to do all your chores. You have to get to class on time. If you don't want to go to class, there's no one telling you you have to. You're paying all your bills. You know, you have to feed yourself. You have to put yourself in a position to make friends. There's no built-in structure. You have to create your own.
Exactly.
You know,
bro, that's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
And it really puts you in a place to figure out who you're going to be.
Yeah.
It's a tough process, I think. It's really important though.
It is, bro. And that's why I was so glad when, you know, you hit me up and we're talking about rooming together because and you would have definitely done fine on your own because you just have a mindset that is unshaken. But I was there as your roommate, but I also kind of wanted to be there sort of like a guide as well. Like this is what I went through in freshman year. So I could give you some insights on stuff to do, places to eat and stuff like that. And, you know, I just wanted to be there for you. You know what I mean? And so I think that was a great experience, bro. But, you know, getting to you, man, in college, right? Or I guess when I found myself in college. And so I guess, have you found out who you are, or has that been like something you've really put too much thought in? Or is it just kind of, you know, just living life?
Just living life. It kind of just flows, you know?
I feel that.
You look back and you realize what things are important and you continue to do those, and then you kind of cut out what's not important. Then over time, it's like you're sculpting a statue. There's like this really cool statue outside of Fretwell of the guy molding himself.
I seen that. Yeah.
So it's never like a finished product. You never sit down and you tell yourself like, I'm going to be X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do A, B, and C to get there, and it's going to take 2 years. You know, You go up and then you fail. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sort of thing. So I think the most defining thing was my college major. So I was unsure. I did engineering in high school like you did.
Yeah.
But I decided I didn't want to do that any longer. So I was between finance and accounting, and I landed on finance because I began to prioritize personal finance. So that seemed like a good place to start. I didn't know what type of career I wanted, but I knew the sort of things I cared about. So at least I was going to put myself in a place where even if this isn't what I want to do with my life, at least I'm going to learn some skills that will benefit me down the road.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the biggest defining things of my freshman year of college. Yeah.
That's what's up, man. Would you say that, I guess let me give some context to this. Yeah. So one time, and this is on topic, but it may sound like it's off topic, but it's on topic. So recently, or a little while ago, I saw something on Instagram, and I hadn't talked to you in a minute, and so I was gonna send it to you, and so I hit the send button or the share button or whatever, and I started typing your name, and I couldn't find your name. I was like, okay, and so then I went to the search, I looked for your name, didn't see it on there. So I was like, okay, Dalton's gotten off of Instagram. And honestly, it didn't surprise me, because something I've noticed about you is that you are somebody who is like appreciative of life. And it kind of goes to what you were saying, kind of just not necessarily going with the flow, but just living life, right? And something I noticed about you is that you're very, how do I put it? I don't know how to put it, but I guess you're just appreciative of life. And the reason I say that is because being off of social media is like you're taking the blinders off, because social media is very blinding, and it can make you not appreciate life. Like if you think about it, let's say you're walking in a different city or something like that, city you've never been to. What's one thing that people are always doing? On their phones, taking pictures and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is a place for that. But sometimes it kind of gets to the point where just appreciate, where you're at, just appreciate this nature and stuff like that. And so that leads me to what I called this episode. I called this episode Unplugged. And I texted it to you, but I didn't tell you like the reason for calling it Unplugged. And so when I first sent you that title for the episode, what was like the first thing that went to your mind? Or
social media.
Oh, so you knew then?
Well, no, I didn't. Not to the extent of which it would come up, but that's just the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
Social media technology. Speaking to what you're saying about Instagram, I think over time, sort of how we were talking about college, you see what's working and what's not working for you, what's adding value to your life and what doesn't. And I think just some forms of social media just weren't adding value to my life. I still use Twitter and TikTok because I'm a sports junkie and I got to be dialed into the 24/7 sports cycle. But Instagram, it's set up in a way that you have a picture feed of these moments in your life that you're putting in front of other people for recognition instead of appreciating it in the moment for yourself. So to me, it just wasn't adding any value. So
I feel that, bro, because like I told you before we started recording, I'm on Instagram like because of this and stuff. But if I wasn't doing all of this, I would probably be off of it too. It's very fake. And this is nothing against people that use it, because I do think there is a place for social media. Yeah, it's where you can go for news. Like you can.
I hope people aren't going to.
No, I mean like you can. I guess you can hear about things very early on.
Yes,
like on social media. You can. It helps you to keep up with people. Because a lot of people, I don't have their number, but I have them on like Instagram and other things, and so it helps me like keep up with them, just see how they're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is kind of deceiving because somebody could be smiling in every picture, but deep down they may be going through something, and because they're posting all of the happy stuff online all the time, it may never put it on your mind to ask them, hey, how are you doing? Hey, how are you doing emotionally, physically, mentally, all that stuff, and plus, it's time consuming, like you were saying, value. One of the most valuable things that we have is time because you can't get it back.
Yeah. We
started this podcast like 30 minutes ago. That's 30 minutes that have gone by that we're not going to get back. Right. Not saying we want to get back because this is what we're doing is important, but it's like, I can definitely understand why you got off of it. And this is not to say that people aren't important, and this is not to say people aren't important. The Bible tells us do nothing from selfish ambition or deceit. Consider others, more significant than yourself. But at the same time, it is important to unplug and just kind of be relieved of all of that other stuff, all of the other things that can distract you and pull you in different directions. And so my question to you is, after having done that, have you seen, I guess what changes have you seen within yourself and like some of the things that you've been doing or even some of the people that you are around?
Yeah. I've definitely noticed a difference. I'd say mostly just in the way I live my life day to day. A lot of times you get into routines of waking up, you pick up your phone, you sit on it for 20 minutes, you get up, you eat breakfast, you look at your phone, you go to work, you sit down, you look at your phone, you do work, lunchtime comes, you look at your phone.
Yeah.
You go home, you look at your phone for a couple hours, you shower, get in bed, look at your phone, and go to sleep. But when you cut those things out, I'm not saying I cut those things out completely.
Yeah.
You notice a lot more time in your day. Mm-hmm. And for the first couple of days, it's like you're, you need to fill that gap. Like you should re-download it. You should get it again. But if you just resist the urge and you start to fill those time slots with hobbies, things you care about, it really changes your perspective of the world. I'm really into movies and art, so I spend a lot of time watching movies and making pottery.
That's what's up.
So you feel like you don't have enough time to fit those things into your life when really, if you just did a reflection of how you're spending your time, you realize that you've got a lot more hours to work with than you think you do.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what it is, bro. The way I think about it, when you plug your phone in, the phone is filling up, right? But when you're like, I'm about to make this a lot more deeper than what it should be, and it might be confusing, but let's just see how it goes. But when you plug your phone up and you're looking at it, it's like your energy is coming out of you and going into the phone.
It's interesting.
But when you just let it sit, and if you have a bad phone, your phone will probably die, like even if you're not using it. But let's just say like your phone goes down, like when you're not using it, that energy is like coming to you. And like you were saying, you come to realize how much time you actually do have. I know that, a lot of people say, we don't have enough time and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But when you look at what you're spending that time doing, you come to realize that maybe you need to cut some things out. Maybe you need to unplug and just kind of figure out what you like to do, find some hobbies and find other things like that. Like, when I started working as a civil engineer, that kind of forced me. Actually, no. When I was working as a civil engineer, when I first started, I would wake up, look at my phone for a little bit, then get ready, go to work, come back and look at my phone, and then go to bed.
Right.
Or probably study the Bible for a little bit, then go to bed. But now, like you were saying, I've kind of unplugged myself from that. And even when I'm posting on there, I kind of just do what I got to do and then just put it down, because I'm just really not that into it. I like to appreciate life as well. I love spending time with my family.
Yeah.
That's something that's big for me. My brothers, bro. Like, my brothers, some of the most important times, and if I had to rank some of my best times of my life, a majority of the top percentage of it would be when I was around my family, when I was around my brothers. So devoting time to them has been something that's not only helped them, but it's helped me to build that relationship with them and make sure that they're on the right track and everything. I like to read a lot more. I found more time to study and just all of that. So it's so important to unplug, bro. And I'm so glad that you did that. And that's why I said I wasn't surprised when you did it, because I could just see that you were somebody who wants to just appreciate life. You don't, it's like you don't want to miss something, right? You don't want to be caught like on your phone and you miss something. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, for anybody out there, you know, just take a week and just fast away from your phone and just see how much time you really have. And you'll start to see some of the benefits, and you'll start to realize that a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily even that fun, you know? And so, yeah, that's dope that you did that, bro. And
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, that's dope that you did that, man. And you know, I'm glad you did that, because I think that's important and that's essential in developing as a person. And that's not to say that people that do spend a lot of time, because some people, that's how they get paid, you know, being on their phone and stuff like that. But I feel like if you just unplug for a little bit and just take some time to, I guess, really find out stuff, then you'll see. And, you know, you were saying you like pottery and stuff like that. That's interesting. Like what, like, I guess you have a lot of hobbies that, I guess, I can't speak for everybody, but in my life, the people that I've met, I don't know anybody who does pottery or anybody who does some of those other things. So like, what makes you, I guess, in like what led to you like having all of these different hobbies and stuff like that? Just going out and experiencing, or was it a specific person? Or okay.
Yeah. So my girlfriend and I, we did a pottery lesson a couple of years ago for an event. I can't remember, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know how much you know about pottery, or wheel throwing, it's called.
Nothing.
So basically, you start with a ball of clay.
Yeah.
You slam it down on this wheel that spins counterclockwise.
Yeah.
Clockwise if you're left-handed. And you use water in your hands to form it into a shape. So like a bowl or a pitcher or a planter. Then it dries, and then you glaze it, and then it turns into ceramic glass.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got into it, but I take classes every week.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. And I just think it goes back to setting aside time to explore hobbies. You know, even if it's not one you're 100% committed to. I just think putting the idea in your head that it's okay to try new things, even if you may fail at first, is important. And that kind of ties back into what we were talking about, our freshman year of college. You're at a point in your life where you're in your first year of working full time. And I think after your freshman year of college, that's the next, and maybe the last, well, I won't say the last. It's the next big formative year in your life where your structure is completely different than what it was. So you're not going to class and then coming home and doing homework. You're working the same hours each week with the same people at the same place. Your daily routine is completely different. And you're at a point where you have to prioritize being creative, having hobbies, making time for family, the things that are important to you. Otherwise, you're going to fall into a slump of unproductiveness. So I think it's fantastic that you've made time for this podcast and your family to structure yourself going forward.
Yeah, and the people you meet, you know, the people and the connections you make by just unplugging from your phone. It's like, it's weird because when you're on Instagram for an extended period of time, you're scrolling through and looking at people when you could be out and like meeting people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or just interacting with those people you already know, just in person, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, it's crazy, man. And, you know, something that I'm glad, some of my favorite memories are back in high school when we were like all just chilling.
Yeah.
You know, because when it was like me, you, Manny, Wyatt, Eric, and, you know, some of the other people in the group and everything, like, bro, like, we wouldn't it's like I don't remember seeing us on our phones for an extended period of time. We would just be chilling and talking and, you know, just vibing, bro. And, you know, I think that that's so important because it's frustrating sometimes when I go out and eat and I see like a couple or something and both of them are on their phones. And I'm like, I don't want to speak for somebody else's relationship. Maybe that's what works for them. But I just couldn't see myself being like that. Even with not even in an intimate romantic setting like that. Even when I'm with a friend or something. Like I try not to be on my phone. You know, even if somebody calls me, I try to, you know, let them know, hey, I'm busy right now or I'm occupied. And so, yeah, man, I just think there's so many people missing out on life. And
have you been to a concert?
I have, yeah.
We've been to a concert together.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever taken a video of the concert?
I have a couple times.
Have you ever gone back to look at that video?
Not at all.
Have you watched fireworks on the 4th of July?
Yeah.
Have you ever taken pictures of the fireworks?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at those pictures?
Nah.
But this 4th of July,
great point.
You will think of previous 4th of Julys and maybe previous experiences you had, but you don't think of those things because you've revisited these photos. You think of these things because of the experiences you're having. You know, you recall those things because of how you're feeling in the moment, not because of a specific picture or video you've taken. So going forward, if all of your memories are just stored in the form of pictures and videos, you're not going to recall those things.
Yeah.
If you're not building new memories proactively, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, there is a place for pictures because...
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not just saying pictures are stupid. I'm just saying prioritizing being in the moment and experiencing it.
That's right.
Is incredibly more valuable.
Yeah. And I agree. You know, even with LeBron, and you think LeBron is the GOAT. I'm still a Jordan. You can call me an old head all you want. Jordan is the GOAT. And anybody out there who doubts that, I don't know what you're doing. Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time.
When LeBron listens to this episode, he's not going to be too happy. I know what you're talking about, though. You're talking about when he broke the record.
Yeah.
And everyone is holding a phone.
Everybody's recording.
Except for the man sitting courtside in the front row. I think he was the CEO of Nike.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got on the black suit and the white T-shirt, I think. He's the only one not recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like...
He's the one who stands out to you in that picture, you know? Like, when you go back and look at it, you're like, man, what's that guy up to?
Yeah,
You know?
and the thing about that is I understand why people would want to record.
Yeah.
But with the moment that grand, you'll always be able to look it up on YouTube.
Right.
Or see it on... And I maybe you do it to see, like, the people who was around you reactions, you know, turn the camera around and let it face you and see your reaction and stuff, which is fine. But I'm just from a grand scale, like, I just think that at times we prioritize more so trying to record the moment instead of actually being in the moment. And I think that's something that a lot of people should look at in their own lives. Absolutely. And, you know, just kind of be like, you know, but, you know, with you, even you, back in college, I don't know if you still have it, you probably do. You had this camera. Do you remember that camera?
Polaroid camera.
Polaroid, the one that spews the paper out. The
film camera.
Yeah, that's what it's called. I don't know what it's called, but it the paper comes out, like the film camera. Even that, like, I feel like that's better than your phone. I mean, I'm who am I to judge? Who am I to make the scale?
Yeah.
And make the curve or whatever, but like, I feel like that. I don't know. I don't know, man. All I know is I do think that life should be appreciated.
Yeah.
But it should be appreciated with your own eyes more so than through a phone screen. And
yeah, I think it also hinders the quality of relationships because you can have a friend who lives in the same state as you, driving distance, and your relationship exists entirely virtually.
That's crazy, bro. That's a great point.
I was talking about movies earlier, and I love watching older movies because there's no cell phones. When you think about the stories your parents tell about growing up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, their stories seem so deep and layered, and their relationships so complex. And I think it's because those relationships existed entirely in person and not virtually. When you're sitting with someone just having a conversation face to face, it's so much more real and effective than on a phone screen.
Yeah, and think back in the times, like biblical times, they walked everywhere, bro, or rode camels.
You're not riding a camel still? Am I the only one still using camel?
Maybe I have to go find mine in the storage.
Mine's being watered out back. So.
Okay. Mine's having his hooves changed. Do camels have hooves?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, man. But that's a great point because even with like relationships, right? And you're in a relationship. So I'll speak for me. I guess I can't really speak for me because I'm not really necessarily. I still struggle. I'm confident, but at the same time, like I feel like sometimes when I'm talking to a woman, I sound like way too like intellectual. Not saying that people aren't intellectual.
Yeah.
But I feel like instead of actually trying to, I feel like I don't know how to say it. But long story short, I'm still working on it. But yeah, bro. Like even with relationships, bro. Like a lot of people won't go up to somebody and talk to them or go up to somebody and shoot their shot, I guess. They'll be going to the same school as somebody, right? And I'm not saying you should just be going and shooting your shot with everybody, but you'll be going to the same school. You sit beside this person in class.
Yeah.
You leave class. There's like 5 minutes in between classes, right? You leave class, go to your next class. Person is sitting beside you still. Your last name is Harris. Her last name is Hunt. So y'all are beside each other because it's alphabetical order. Y'all leave class again. Y'all have another 5 minute period in between the class. Y'all go to the next class. Oh, y'all have the same class there. Right?
Yep.
Y'all get on the bus to go home. Y'all live in the same neighborhood. Right? You tracking?
I'm tracking.
All right.
Spending a lot of time with this Hunt woman.
Yeah. So Harris and Hunt, right? Y'all on the same bus.
Yep.
And then y'all get off the bus and y'all go to your homes, right? See what your parents have cooked or whatever. Go do your homework. And then Harris gets on his phone and then hits Hunt up on Instagram saying, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, Harris, you were with this woman the whole time. But you see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Everything is like on the phone, bro. And it's like exactly your point. Like a lot of friendships are now like just virtual because, and I know life gets busy and I know things happen and I know people, get a bunch of responsibilities and stuff. But it's just completely different when you're in person, for real. Because when it's through text, like you can't see the person's expressions. You can't see, how they reacted to something you may have said. You can't get their tone or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I don't know, but
something I think about and something that's actually been a pretty big topic of discussion lately is how the internet affects confidence. So, for example, in your analogy with Hunt and Harris.
Yeah.
If one of them approaches the other, introduces themselves, and the other one's not interested, there's room for backlash, like on social media or on the internet. Like, oh, so-and-so just came up to me. What an idiot. No, it sounds ridiculous, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And it's been really popular at gyms where people will record themselves working out, and people will walk in the background.
That's right, yeah.
And just they'll be put on blast in the comments or by the creator, like, oh, so-and-so was staring at me or criticizing me.
Yeah.
Just because they were in a place where someone else was recording and they happened to be appearing in the video, and they don't have a platform to share their context of what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that discourages people from going to the gym, you know? It can really hinder people's confidence in several different ways, and that just kind of sucks. You know, I don't think there's a way to get around that.
Yeah. Something that has helped me, you know, I guess not just with shooting my shot, but just even talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's say you shoot your shot at somebody and they're like, nah, they reject you. Did they really reject you, or did they reject who they think you are? You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily really even you getting rejected.
Yeah.
It's like
that's a perception thing.
It's perception. Free game. They're rejecting who they think you are or what other people have said about you instead of actually going to the source and finding out who that person is. And they have every right to say no. Men and women have every right to say no, because people are going through different stages. Maybe they're just not looking for a relationship. Maybe they're just not in the mood to talk or anything like that. But I'm talking specifically for the people who may feel that lack of confidence. Mm-hmm. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting rejected or just people simply not wanting to talk to you. It's just they may just be rejecting who they think you are because they haven't gotten to know you.
Yeah.
But I definitely see what you're saying, man. Like,
and I think, sorry, not to cut you off,
you're good,
but
you're
I
good.
think it's important that you are actively involved in your environment. For example, you work at a new engineering firm. It's important to establish who you are from the first time, to put yourself out there and be very vocal about, I'm Gabe, I'm interested in these things, I'm this type of person. Yeah. Because then you can build your own reputation, you know?
Yeah.
And then you don't leave it up to someone else.
Yeah, man.
To build that for you. So I think that's an important thing
and
to do.
And it's a burden trying to be somebody you're not.
Yeah.
Because, bro, imagine having to be somebody else every single day of your life for an extended period each day. Mm-hmm. It's a burden, and you may not realize it, but like, it's like one of those pictures where you see the person and there's like, they get home and there's like a bunch of different faces hanging up on their wall, and they get home and take off their happy face and put it on the wall, and they're like, they have a sad face.
Yeah.
You know, like and some different people are going through different things, nothing to that. But I'm talking specifically for being something that you're not. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be who you are. And I think in a lot of ways, people not only respect you more for being yourself, but not for everybody, but for me, mm-hmm. I'm drawn to people that are authentically themselves. You know, even if it may not necessarily, no, let me not say that. Not people that are doing the wrong thing necessarily, but like, if you're not afraid to be who you've been purposed to be, mm-hmm. then there's like, you deserve like the utmost respect, because you're just unapologetically yourself. And that's something that has been kind of a struggle in a I guess how do you call it? In a setting like an engineering office.
Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. It's because there's these expectations set that you're this type of person.
Yeah.
I think there's similar expectations of a different degree in finance and accounting. Mm-hmm. Those are two different, but there's these narratives based upon different career types that people think you have to align with. If
yeah.
you're an engineer, you're a bookworm and you're very studious and you're very on the nose. If you're an accountant, you're air quote boring, very linear. You're not very sporadic or creative.
Yeah.
You know, and those things exist in the work you do, but they extend to how people perceive you as a person.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of it, but you'll meet someone new and they'll tell you what they do, and you begin to establish ideas about that person that may not necessarily be true.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very tough thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important to, before you establish any of those ideas, learn who someone truly is, and don't let your perception manipulate what reality is, you know?
Yeah, and I'm definitely guilty of that too. Like I've definitely I don't think I told you, or you may not have known, I was in a relationship this past summer.
No.
You didn't know? My bad, man.
That's okay.
But yeah, I was in a relationship this past summer, and I was, in a lot of ways, I wasn't being myself. You know, the individual that I was with, that I was dating at that time.
Harris or Hunt? I'm just kidding.
Hunt.
Okay.
But yeah, we came from like two different worlds.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to, I guess,
conform to her expectations.
Yeah, conform to her world instead of being myself and introducing her to my world. And, you know, we were both at fault in a lot of things, which is why it didn't eventually work out. You know, I'm not the type to blame everything on the woman. I'm able to look at myself and I guess, what's the word? Be accountable for some of the things I've done. But I was definitely conforming to a lot of her expectations of me, and not being myself. And it's crazy because my dad even saw it, and my dad, you know, at times was telling me, you know, hey, you're burning yourself out, buddy. You're burning yourself out, because I'm very much a homebody. But I was going out, like, and staying out, you know, late.
Yeah.
And not doing anything wrong, but just like, you know, going to the movies and then sitting in the car and talking for a while. And there's nothing wrong with that, but dude gets tired. I get tired, bro. And even the way I was talking, like, the way I talk like, I was changing the way I talk. Like, I would be saying things that I don't even say. Like, I would be saying finna. Like, I don't say that. Like, you know?
Yeah.
So I would just be saying a lot of things I don't say. And I think in a way that once it started becoming that burden, like I was talking about, the real Gabe started to come out, because he was getting tired of being pushed down by that weight of being somebody else.
Yeah.
And so the real Gabe started coming out a little bit more, and it eventually led to the demise. But, you know, that's why they say, like, the way, a lot of the time, how a relationship starts is the way it'll end. So if it starts in a way where I'm not being who I am, it'll end when, because the truth is always eventually going to come out. You can only be fake for so long. And so once the real me started coming out, that's when the problems really started coming. So that's why I say I'm accountable for that as well, because I gave her the perception of what she was dating, when in reality I was a completely different person than the dude she met. And yeah, bro. So I completely agree with what you said, man. Like, I'm really enjoying this conversation, because this is important, and I think it'll bring a lot of value to people that are listening, because I think there's a lot of people that are kind of stuck in the trap of, I guess, just trying to be something that, I guess, trying to make everybody like them, I guess. And like,
and I think that's a great example in your life of how unplugging doesn't necessarily have to pertain to social media or technology. It can pertain to what's just going on in your life. You know, unplug what you think is happening, take a moment, reflect, look back, and move forward based on what you actually think, not based on the ideas you're being fed, you know?
Yeah.
Just journaling and meditating and reflecting on your life in a way that you're able to make changes.
Yeah.
You know, unplugging doesn't have to be related to social media.
Yeah, for sure.
Technology, you know?
Yeah.
It's more a sense of getting to know yourself, your true self. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's important because that self-reflection, right? You know, for example, when I was in the process of setting this whole podcast up and everything, there were points where I would shut off social, like I would deactivate my account on Instagram and stuff, and just kind of try and figure out what direction I want to take this in. And I feel that if I had been on social media, because when you're for me, it may be different for other people, but for me, I didn't want to base the direction I would take for this from other podcasts.
I think that's important to
distance
yourself from.
And so if I'm like on social media and if I'm looking at all these different things, and I've said this on almost every episode, like, you know, the way I look at a lot of things in life is like concrete. And when concrete is wet, you know, people will step all in it. And then when it dries up, you'll see their footprints in it. And so I didn't want, and this may sound selfish, but I didn't want anybody else's footprints in this, you know, and this podcast is definitely about us, but I wanted to make sure it was as authentic as possible. It wasn't based off of, you know, somebody else's, I guess, beliefs or anything. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so, yeah, that self-reflection, bro, and just kind of doing that and just seeing it's very what's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of the word. I'll say enlightening. You know, unplugging, I think, will definitely enlighten you and kind of help you find direction.
Yeah.
You know, and so I know the time is getting close here, but you know, my last question to you, man, you know, it just left my mind. That's crazy. Right, man.
Yeah, no, I think the enlightenment idea you mentioned, I think that's pretty on the nose. The self-reflection leads to enlightenment. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's a rewarding thing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, and it's dope being you, bro. Like, it's dope being yourself. Like, I've, and this is gonna sound prideful or selfish, but it's biblical because, you know, the Bible tells us love one another as we love ourselves. You know, when I feel like unplugging can help you begin to love yourself more. I think that it helps you to find out more about yourself. And the more you find, it's like a relationship, right? The more you find out about your partner, if it's good things, obviously, because there could be some bad things, but like the more you find out about your like I had I was in this Christian group called M28 on campus. You remember I used to go to it and stuff like that. The director of it was this guy named Sam. I actually had him on here. And he said he's married, and he said there's joy in learning more about his wife on a daily basis. And so, like, learning more about your partner, whether husband or wife or whatever, there's joy in that, and you can you find yourself loving them more every day.
Yeah.
And so when you unplug from that marriage that you have with your device, right? You start to learn more about yourself and you can start loving yourself more. Dang, that's a bar. That's a bar. That's a bar. You know what I mean though, right?
Yeah.
Bro, yeah, man. So
yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, man.
Do you think of your final question?
Huh?
Your final question? Did it come back to you?
Nah, but I can think of one off the dome.
I'll give you a final question.
Okay.
How about that?
Let's go.
So,
Changing the game.
What episode, how many episodes are out of your podcast?
At the time we're recording this, 8 episodes are out.
8 episodes. So 8 episodes, 2 months of work. It's a lot of time commitment.
Yeah.
Going forward, how are you going to unplug and reflect about how this is going, the impact it's having, and adjust accordingly to make?
I feel that. I'm gonna be a little bit like vulnerable right now.
Yeah.
Maybe not vulnerable, but honest. This week, actually, earlier this week, I'm not gonna say who it is, but I've seen somebody that I know having a lot of success in their endeavor, in their purpose, and what they're doing. And I'm not gonna lie, it made me discouraged a little bit because, at the time we're recording this podcast is still very small. Not too many people know of it, and the influence, I guess, isn't like on a grand scale yet. And so I was discouraged at the time, and I was like, I was like talking to God, bro. I was like, dang, God, like I'm doing what you purposed me to do. Like I'm doing my best, and I was telling him, like, I don't care about the numbers, but in reality, deep down, like I told you before we started recording, deep down, I do struggle with that. I do struggle with seeing low numbers sometimes. Yeah. But it's crazy because I think everything happens for a reason. And when I'm at work, I'm always working, bro. I'm never not working. Even when the only time I'm not working is when I'm sleeping. What I mean by that is even when I'm at work, I'm listening to podcasts. Yeah. I'm listening to sermons. Everything is just about the work. My job is what I get paid to do. My work is what I've been purposed to do. And so everything I do, I try to contribute to the work that has been given to me that I'm stewarding, right? And so at work, I was listening to this one sermon, this pastor named Vodi Bakum. Make sure y'all should check him out. He's a really good pastor. And he was talking about the parable, one of Jesus' parables of the prodigal son. And the father, he was wealthy and his inheritance was going to be passed to his 2 sons. It's kind of like the story we said at the beginning. One of the sons, he wanted his inheritance immediately. One of the sons, he was just working with the father and being patient. So the son who wanted it immediately, his father gave it to him and he ran off and he was just spending and doing everything and doing whatever he wanted. And then once all that money was blown, he was so down low that he was eating with the pigs, right? And so he came back, and as he was coming back, he was practicing what he was going to say to his father. Father, I'm sorry. I'm not worthy of being your son and stuff like that. And so when he came back, before he even got there, his father saw him from the distance, and his father came and started running to him. And he gave him a hug, said, hey, kill the, maybe been a calf, I don't remember, but kill the most grandest calf or whatever. My son is now here. He was lost and now he's found. He was dead and now he's alive. But the other son, he was looking at it and he was like, Dad, I've been here with you working this whole time. Yeah. I've been doing all this stuff for you. Why is he who ran off getting rewarded for something that I should have been rewarded for? Like, you know what I mean? And that just put it in perspective, because that made me realize that while I'm sitting there driving to work complaining and talking to God and stuff about that stuff, I'm being the other son. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm the one who's not satisfied, right? But in reality, think about it. The son who ran away, he's getting all of this material stuff, and it is important, but it's material. The other son got to spend time with his father.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have my heavenly Father, the Lord. I've been walking with him for a long time now, but I'm over here complaining about not getting numbers. You know what I mean? And so that really put it in perspective for me to just be appreciative. Like I was saying before, the gift isn't, when I gave you that money, the gift isn't the money. The gift is just being a friend of you. You know what I mean? The gift isn't getting a bunch of followers and stuff like that. Yeah. The gift is that I get to be in a relationship with Jesus, And so that put it in perspective. And so I guess now to answer your question about unplugging, I'm just going to unplug from looking at the numbers.
Yeah. Journey, not the destination.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
I'm just, and sometimes I'm still guilty of that. Sometimes I still take a peek at the numbers and everything, but
that's not what it's about.
That's not what it's about, bro. Just relieving that burden of looking at the numbers, going forward. This is just about the purpose, bro, and just spreading the gospel and stuff like that. So that's how I'm approaching it. That's a great question. That's a great question.
Great answer.
That's crazy, man. But bro, man, I definitely got to get you back on here, man. This is one of my favorite ones, bro. But I appreciate you being on here, man. It really means a lot, bro.
Thanks
because
for having me.
One of my favorite things about starting this podcast was just being able to bring, people that are close to me on, people that have had an impact in my life. And, it's awesome to show others like what I know about the people that I bring on already, and anybody is welcome. If you're listening to this right now and you want to come on, don't hesitate to send a DM on Instagram. I've already done a Zoom episode, so we can do Zoom if you're not in the area. If you're in this area, the Charlotte area, you can come to the studio. But yeah, man. So again, I appreciate you for being on here, bro. If you're listening, thank you for tuning in. Make sure again to follow us on all of the podcast streaming platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, that's Spotify, that's Google Podcasts. And again, please leave a review, please leave a rating. It'll help out a lot. It'll be so encouraging. And it'll just be a blessing, and it'll help out. So I encourage you to do that. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn the post notification bell on so you can be notified of any new episodes that come out, and just continue rolling with us. I feel that this thing is, I feel like God is doing something great here. And I feel like, we're on track to doing great things. So, again, I appreciate y'all for listening. Thank you again, my man, Dalton, for being on here. I appreciate it, man. And we'll see y'all next time. Peace.